Welcome to the Writers Roundtable tonight, folks. Good to have you here, our audience here, and also our virtual audience. And this is a group, you know, I help run it, as well as Nicole Smith, Jamie Kinsley, and Dominic Miller. I'm Jim McClure. And what we do is this is a networking group that local historians and researchers, and but members of the public are here too, and you know, who just are interested in local history. And we have speakers as we're having tonight, and we share projects. You'll see some of that going on tonight. In fact, the first 10 or 15 minutes of this tonight will be sharing the projects and just sharing of information. So our featured speaker, Michael Helfrich, will be on in about 7:15 to 7:20, just to be aware of that. One of the things this group does also is foster, you know, submissions to the Journal of York County Heritage, and that's a big part of our role here at the York County History Center. And so, you know, we do enjoy members of the public that are here, and our virtual audiences cause this group to grow. We've been around for about 5 years, and we're having the largest audiences we've ever had. So without any further delay, Nicole, you want to tell us some stuff that's going on at the History Center?
Thank you, Jim. Welcome. Great to see you all here tonight, and thanks for joining us online. Just a couple quick announcements. If you are watching at home and you have any questions during the program, please type them in the chat feature or in comments if you're on Facebook. We'll be checking them and answering them at the end. This webinar is being live streamed on our York County History Center Facebook page and will be available as a recording on our YouTube channel. Just a couple events. Tomorrow is First Friday in York, and we offer candlelight tours of the Gates and Plow Tavern from 5:30 to 8. That's a free event. Our second Saturday program, also a free event, is Sarah Walsh, who will be speaking about Abigail Adams in Pennsylvania. More information or to register for any of our programs, please visit yorkhistorycenter.org. I also would like to make an announcement. We have a new book in our gift shop and on our online store that we're publishing. We've just published, in fact, end of the week, a couple weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving. It's a new second edition of the Sticks and Stones, the Myers family in Levittown. We originally published this book in 2005, but we added a new foreword by Michael Newsom, the Secretary of the Office of Administration of the Governor, and a new afterword by Daisy Myers' daughter, Linda. I'm going to get a copy, so in case you want to take a look at it before you leave today. But if you aren't familiar, please take a look. It's an important story with York County connections, resilience in the face of prejudice. And we are also sending free copies of our book to public and private schools in York County. So thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Jim.
Thank you, Nicole. This is really an exciting time on the York County history front. We have you know, a new curriculum that Brian Wade and others have championed that's going out into schools. The Hanover area has a new museum. There's the Crispus Attucks is looking at a historical and cultural center on their campus. There's the steam plant project here at York County History Center is moving along. There's a lot of discussion about the Mifflin House out in Helm Township, making that a welcome center, an underground railroad venue. And then we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of Declaration of Independence and Articles of Confederation. So a lot going on. It's a good time to be involved with local history and culture in York County. And here we have tonight, you know, just a kind of a deep dive into the work that one of our pioneers has done, Glenalvin Goodrich on the photography front. You know, one of the things I mentioned earlier about one of the things we do here at the History Center is we do a journal of York County Heritage, and this is this year's version and has a lot of great articles about early pioneering wind power, antique clocks that that ran in York County for years, pioneering Latinos in York County, and even something on the Hanover Shoe Farm. So we cover the territory. And in 2011, we've been publishing for about 10 years. 2011, we had an article in here by Michael Helfrich, our speaker tonight, and he wrote about the question of Thomas Paine at Yorktown. So maybe during his talk, he can answer that question, the question of Thomas Paine. He can give us his answer briefly tonight. So that's a big part of what we do. We work on the journal here. So another thing that we do is we have members of the roundtable in the public talk about their projects. So we have several folks that are going to be talking about the project in less than a minute. So we'll maybe ask Joe Brillhart to lead off and tell us about your project, and we'll have others as well.
Yeah,
Jim, come up here.
one of the projects I've been looking at of late came right after the lightning strike fire to the Horn Farm house on October 25th. Holly Bedell, Dr. Bedell of the Lower Windsor Township Historical Society called me, and she knew I had a connection to the Horn Farm through some Ruby Strickler relatives. So she asked if I'd write a piece for her newsletter on the Lower Windsor connection to the Horn Farm. And I'm going to have that to her by the time her next newsletter comes out, which I think may be still later this month or certainly in January. And it sort of documents the movement out of Lower Windsor Township by the Ruby family when John Ruby Jr. purchased the Horn Farm from the Sulzbachs in 1832. The Sulzbachs still had some land there, and they ran the tannery where the tourist inn sits now. But the Rubys, who intermarried quite regularly with the Stricklers, continued on the Horn Farm from 1832 till I believe it was 1943, when the surviving Stricklers sold the property to David E. Horn of the D.E. Horn Company. And that's what it became known as the Horn Farm. So if you want to get the skinny on the history of the Horn Farm, you ought to subscribe. I'm going to give Holly a plug here. You ought to subscribe to the Lower Windsor Area Historical Society, and you'll get a copy of that Horn Farm documentary fresh off the press.
Thanks, Joe. Anybody else? Linda?
Hi, I'm Linda Reese. I guess you could call me an interloper from another county. I live in New Cumberland, which is just across the Yellow Breeches from Newmarket in Fairview Township. And we have just come out with a walking tour of historic downtown New Cumberland. And it literally came off the press last week, and we're selling it for $5 as a fundraiser for the New Cumberland Public Library. And you might think that little New Cumberland, not much happened there. It all happened here. Birth, death, murder, disasters. It all happened here. So I did not bring extra copies. I just brought the one copy. But if you're interested, maybe you could sell a few in your gift shop. Because we're so, half of the people in New Cumberland are buried in Mount Olivet Cemetery, which is in York County. So if you're interested, you can talk to me a little bit more about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Anyone else? Let's see, Rick, want to come first? Introduce yourself. And
Sure. Good evening. I'm Richard Resch with the West Manheim Township Heritage Committee. and we were always working on a list of projects. Recently, well, a year or two ago, we did a book on Where is Working's Tavern. And the book kind of ended with Philip Working being murdered and died in the York County poorhouse. We didn't know whether it was the son or the father. Recently, some Working's relatives came forward to us, provided information that it was the son. So we're going to do a part 2. We're also working on a book now about Peter Dix. Peter Dix had the first bloomery in Spring Grove Borough in York County. And lo and behold, he owned the property in West Manheim Township on the Adams County line. Recently, the landscaping firm doing some work on the property came up with some slag. So we're doing some investigative work to see what the source of that is. Regardless, the spin we're putting on this, Peter Dix beat Marion Furnace guys by a couple of years, being the first iron maker in York County. And finally, about 3 weeks ago, I was contacted by a private individual at a cemetery on Old House Road in West Manhattan Township came up for tax sale and was bought by a private individual. And the Heritage Committee promised that they will help the individual with the genealogy research for the people interned in the cemetery.
Yeah, I think that almost every one of the towns around here, New Cumberland, West Manheim, is kind of the center of the universe. In West Manheim, the headwaters of both the Cadors and the Conewago Creeks form somewhere in or around West Manheim Township. So, I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff, highways and so forth. Jeff Kirkman.
Thank you. Just briefly want to say something about 2 projects. One, I'm founder of the York African American Historical Preservation Society. I'm happy to say we've been trying to preserve and compile and propagate African American history here in York. One thing I'm very proud of now is that we're trying to merge our efforts with the efforts of Crispus Attucks. Mr. Bob Simpson and those guys are trying to get a history and cultural center off the ground. I think that's going to be a magnificent addition to our community, and I'm proud to be working with that. Additional piece is I'm president of the board of the local African American cemetery, Lebanon Cemetery out on North George Street. And we are working with our partners, the Friends of Lebanon Society, to have a wreath laying ceremony on December 18th, along with the national program Reese across America. So you all are invited, to come out and see that we've been trying to beautify the cemetery and bring it back to a place of dignity and respect, that our ancestors wanted it to be at that time. So we're happy to invite all of you guys to come out and see that ceremony. We'll have some, some festivities going on. And thank Jim for having me have to say a few words for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I mentioned some of these big projects at the beginning, including the Crispus Attucks local museum and cultural center. But there's just a ton of other smaller projects that we're hearing about, and it just really gets you excited. So, Tom Yingling, like to say a few words.
Yeah, I'm Tom Yingling. I'm with the Cadores Valley Area Historical Society. We're located in Jefferson, Pennsylvania, in York County, and we've been around for 20 years. And I just recently became the president back in July, and I'm also the newsletter editor. So we've been trying to reinvent ourselves, even though we've been around for 20 years, but realizing that we have a museum, but we have a lot of stuff that wasn't really known. It was just in boxes, stashed away. So we're in the process of now reorganizing the place and trying to get some meaningful displays up, that kind of thing. So that's a big project. So, for me personally, my background isn't archiving, so it's been a challenge. Nicole Smith came in here. She was nice enough to share her knowledge with us. And I realize I know just a speck of what she knows about this whole deal, and I'm finding more as I dig into it. So it's been a challenge, and I appreciate help like she had. We had from Glen Rock Museum. And so it's been interesting. We're actually neighbors to West Manheim. So we cover Heidelberg, Goodrich Township, North Goodrich Township, and Manheim Township, and also Springfield. So we butt up against some of the our neighbors who have some historical societies also, but it's great to be able to share information, and it's been an interesting time and a challenging time as we look at the future for our historical society. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, Tom and Jerry Jones and go out tramping in all kinds of neat places. Just recently to the cave, I believe, and you're in Indian Rock, and so a lot of neat stuff that Tom's doing. Okay, Stephen.
Hi, I'm Stephen Smith with York's Past blog on the York Daily Record website. Basically, people ask me, how do I come up with topics? I find them by happenstance because, and an example of it was the blog I'm working on right now, when that is with Webb Township in York County. Nobody, and I ask people about it, nobody recognizes it. Webb Township was going to separate a year after Springettsbury separated from Spring Garden Township. Webb Township was going to form in the Webb Hill area, Wyndham Hills area, and separate from Spring Garden Township. So I'm working on that now. That'll be my next blog.
Yeah, someone online today was talking about, hey, Springettsbury Township is on an 1860 map, and it, of course, wasn't founded. It was a relatively new township.
Yeah.
And, yeah, 1892.
91.
Yeah. So it's great. Anybody else want to share about their projects? Okay, Donna, all yours to introduce Michael.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. I'm Dami Miller with the Writers Roundtable, and tonight our speaker is going to be York Mayor Michael Helfrich. He's going to present about the meaningful and tragic life of Glenalvin Goodrich, and Goodrich was a photographer from York County. So, Michael, if you'd like to come up and speak.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here with all these extremely knowledgeable people. That said, if you hear something completely crazy that I say, please, you can jump in and correct me at the time, because I know that we all learn different things. Did someone leave a mask up here?
Yeah, I did.
But of course, we all have access to different information all the time. And we put together ideas of what history was, a lot of times with very little information. So I love to just be here with you all and imagine that we can add these things together. And that was really my impetus for putting this project together, was that I knew there was a lot going on. There were images out there, but nobody had looked at them in any kind of, at least I hadn't seen anybody look at them in any kind of order and see if they told us a story. Now, before we get into this, let me start with responding to Jim. Jim, there is no way I can respond to the question of Thomas Paine in a brief period, other than to say that almost every history book from Foner on down was incorrect about where Thomas Paine was during the time when York was the capital of the United States. He's very clear in his May 16th letter to Benjamin Franklin, which is one of the few existing letters from Thomas Paine, that he was all over the place. He was at the Battle of the Kegs in Philadelphia, then he was over in Lancaster, then he was in Princeton dropping off his chest of important papers, and then he came to York to collect his paycheck around March 7th, 1778. Of course, he wrote the part of the Fifth Crisis is dated March 19th, 1778. So he was definitely in York. Where he stayed, I would just add this one thing, and that is that Samuel Adams received a letter around April 11th of 1778 from, I believe it was John Lovell, a delegate to Congress. And it said, don't expect to get accommodations here. Things were, the winter was over, things were getting packed. And so while early on, it is quite logical that Payne would have stayed at James Smith's office at the square of York, by April and May of 1778, there was a lot going on. So it's certainly logical that the oral tradition of the Cook's house, being the house where Thomas Payne stayed, was probably accurate for that period from late April or early May until the time when Congress left York. Very likely, if you read the article, he's back and forth across the Susquehanna 4 times in 4 months at least. So he's all over the place. I still can't answer the question other than the existing historians are wrong. And there's plenty of evidence to support the local oral tradition started by W.F.O. Rosenmiller, who said that in 1882 and 1883, his father, when driving from the Rosenmiller store up to the Rosenmiller farm, would point across the Cadorus at the stone house and say, that's the house where Thomas Payne stayed when he was in town. Please read the article, enjoy it. There are copies for $2 because it's an old journal. There's copies for $2. If you don't buy them, I'm going to buy the rest of them. You got any more boxes of those? Because I'm going to buy some.
I'll put a link up.
Oh, okay, put a link on it. Thank you. Thank you. Now, for why I'm really here. I'm going to go briefly through the, as I said, the meaningful and tragic life of Glenalvin Goodrich. And then I also want to make sure there is some attention paid to the work that I just completed last night on cataloging 47 images taken by Glenalvin Goodrich. You may have heard recently that a collection was donated to the Smithsonian that has probably, I'm guessing, somewhere between 5 and 10 other images of Glenalvin Goodrich. It's 40 total daguerreotypes between three of the most prominent African-American early photographers, and then some other daguerreotypes of early African-Americans. So I'm guessing, I know that there are 5 or 6 that I have already documented, but we'll get some more. But when speaking with the Smithsonian, they're not going to have those processed until 2023. So I decided I wasn't going to wait, and we're going to start off with the first edition that at least gives us all something to work from. And as you historians know, any history is a working document, and we're always learning. So I want to encourage people now I'll put the whole thing online. It's only 12 pages long, but you can utilize this and maybe check out your old cased photos at home. Let's find these Goodriches. Let's find the other ones too. J.T. Williams, I'll talk about him later, or other early photographs. When we bring all this knowledge together, we get to see a much larger picture than when we look at them one at a time. So I would encourage everybody to take a look in the old chest or in the drawers and see what you have hidden in there. So let me start off. Many people know about William Goodrich and his amazing rise from slavery into the most prominent African-American businessman of his time. And not only businessman, but of course his work with Frederick Douglass and other members that were working on the Underground Railroad. And I encourage you now, please make an effort to go over to the Goodrich Freedom Center. It is, I think it's open by appointment right now, but it is an amazing place. It's at 123 East Philadelphia Street. Easy to remember, 123. Easy as 123 East Philadelphia Street. And it is important very much because of the Goodrich family and their presence here, their involvement in the Underground Railroad movement, and just what appears to be a pretty predominant acceptance of a strong example of a healthy and wealthy or semi-wealthy African-American family in our community. And just one example, because this whole area over here around Philadelphia Street included the Gray family and some Smallwoods and other folks that were working on the Underground Railroad, and some of which, quite a few of which, are buried at Lebanon Cemetery. And that's another place where I would encourage you to learn more about it and visit it with respect, and hopefully visit it with someone from either the board or from the Friends of Lebanon Cemetery, because they are also full of knowledge. So the first generation is William Goodridge. William Goodridge gets married and has his first child, Glenalvin Goodrich, in 1828, February of 1828. By the time he is about 18, he is 17 or 18, he's a teacher in the African or colored school, is what it says in the books. But of course, an early African-American school, likely not a school building, but probably within a church somewhere, that they didn't have their own buildings yet at that time, again, from my knowledge. And a guy named Reinhardt comes traveling through and puts an ad in the paper and stays at his father's building, which was on the corner, and I think the foundation is still there, of 1 West Market Street. And his father at the time had built the largest building, the tallest building in York. Now, I said he was pretty well accepted. That didn't mean there weren't people that didn't accept. Obviously, whether it's today, 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, there have been and continue to be racists, bigots in York County. And we've always had great people working at the same time that these ignorant people have been working in York, and we continue this battle today. In this case, the Goodridge building, I'll just throw that out there because the guy that built the building then, Caddy Corner, legend says, I don't know if there's any written evidence of this, Jim, that he built it because he didn't like that an African-American had the tallest building in York. So coincidentally, Glenalvin Goodrich ended up in that building for one of his later studios. But his first studio was in his father's building. This guy Reinhardt comes, and he's a traveling itinerant Daguerrean. So this is very early. Imagine this, photography was invented in 1839. 1839. By 1847, only 8 years later, an African-American picks up the idea that he wants to be part of this brand new science. Brand new. Never, ever had sun and silver and chemicals come together to place an image that you could see. But prior to this, it was only man's interpretation through drawing and things like that. This is the first time, 1839, that you could have an image like this. And it still took another couple of years at least a year to perfect making an image of a human. So within 7 or 8 years, we have this young man, he's only 18 years old, who's now excited about a new science, something brand new to the world. Very soon after this itinerant leaves, Glenalvin Goodrich sets up his first studio. And his first studio, as I said, is on the 3rd story of China Hall. He has advertising in the newspaper in July of 1847, the whole way through early 1848. And then by April of 1848, he moves to his dad's house, or his family's house, because he's living there, and also the whole family is living at 123 East Philadelphia Street. And he sets up his studio at that time. Now this first image, I'm going to go back and forth a little bit, but I'll show you the first couple images. This first image was taken either at China Hall or more likely, well, it's hard to say. It's either at China Hall, either in the square of York, or at 123 East Philadelphia Street. So he moves to his father's house. Yet another image that was done now this one almost definitely was done at his father's house at 123 East Philadelphia Street. And I found these beauties in the marvelous world of eBay that are actually dated. These are the family or the wedding photos of Leah, Robb, and Joseph Fitz. Everybody know that name Fitz around York County? Fitz is right in Central Market. They've got their wedding photos taken on March 17th, 1850. Glenalvin Goodrich was in his father's home. His studio was there until August 21st, 1850. To my knowledge, these are the only two documented dated photos that are verified to have been taken in the Goodrich house. So they were that was very exciting. I do want to mention also that I have been actively, my interest in this came about when I was at the opening of the Daguerrean studio at the Goodridge Center. So daguerreotypes, the folks that made daguerreotypes were either called Daguerreans or daguerreotype artists. If you look really closely, I can't quite see it, but on his little black label there, it says daguerreotype artist. But I went to this opening, and what I learned was they had all these amazing things. They had set up a studio. They replicated a studio in the original location, but they didn't have any Glenalvin Goodrich images. And I said, this can't be. And in my quest for York history, I found, I think in September 2019, my first Goodrich. And then I connected with Rebecca Countess and Frank Countess. And they said they also wanted to see images going to the Goodrich Freedom Center. So with my sleuthing and Frank and Rebecca's financial support, we have been able to get 4 images so far, 4 of the most important images known in the Goodrich world, because these 4 images contain 8 individuals, all of whom are identified, which is very rare. Some of whom are the family of Judge Fisher, who is going to come to a very important role towards the end of my biography. So I know I have to move a lot faster if I'm going to get through this. One thing I did want to say though, this studio over at 123 East Philadelphia Street, like within the last 2 years, I have now run in these circles, these very close, tight-knit circles of daguerreotype and ambrotype. Teach you about that in a minute or two, but these enthusiasts. And they've been so kind. They didn't know that much about this, but from everything I'm told, this is the one and only location in the world where a Daguerrean studio has been replicated in its original location. Imagine that we have that 2 blocks away. So one of the reasons why I'm doing this is I'm the mayor of York. I'm also, while I'm a historian, I'm looking for ways to promote York City. An international destination, it might be a niche, but people are going up to Boston to look at places where the buildings don't even exist anywhere. And they're like, oh, that's where the studio was. We've got the studio. And one of the very first African-American photographers ever in the world. Definitely top 10, probably top 6 or 7 first ones. So we've just got amazing history here from the African-American history, from the photography history. We have to do, I think we need to do a better job sharing it with the world. And I hope we do, and I hope this helps. So leaving 123 East Philadelphia Street, the Goodrich then went back to the square in the Center Hall building, and had his studio there for 5 or 6 years. Now, right after he got his studio, he got married and to a wonderful woman by named Rhoda, by the Presbyterian minister and abolition leader, Reverend Daniel H. Emerson. So again, these connections with abolition, it just keeps repeating all through the story of Glenalvin Goodrich, not just, and his sister Emily, and others. It's just such a strong family working to help enslaved people realize their potential in their life. Shortly after getting married, I found a neat article that, and I'm searching for this photo, that the Patapsco Fire Company of Baltimore was here in York, and he took an outdoor image, I'm assuming an outdoor image, he took an image of the fire company. And so they wrote a nice little thank you note in the York newspaper saying, thank you for taking such a nice image of us. So imagine a fire. So I've talked to my contacts down in Maryland. Nobody knows of this image, but just a nice thing to think about. This is a young man, at this time, 23, gaining the respect of the community. So many individuals, you'll see when I go through here, so many individuals are supporting his interests, supporting his endeavors. Now, 1851 is also the time when there's a newcomer from Baltimore to York. So 1847 to about 1851, he had the monopoly. And he's the first, while William Wagner probably dabbled for a little while in daguerreotypes around 1845. Glenalvin Goodrich, starting in 1847, is the first professional photographer consistent in the city of York. So the first photographer of York. But he's also, he's gaining support and popularity, but he's an entrepreneur like his dad. If you don't know about his dad had his fingers in everything. He was, you probably heard it's Christmas time, the Christmas trees. Charge a couple pennies for people to come see Christmas trees over at 123 East Philadelphia Street. He was going to New York and Philadelphia and getting all kinds of goods and bringing them to York. And in 1853, Glenalvin won 2 prizes at the York Fair. He only came in, and he had won earlier prizes at the York Fair, but in 1853, he only got 2nd place for his daguerreotypes that year. But he got a diploma for his coffee extract. So he's doing, he's working multiple plans here. He's trying to do everything he can to make money. So he continues to be very successful and very competitive with as this new industry is growing, competition is growing. He's changing things. Around 1854, something new comes out. Now, when you go over and see the daguerreotypes that are over there, you will find them hard to see because they're plated on silver, which is essentially a mirror, and you have to catch the light just right to be able to see these things. So in 1854, an American in cutting, working with Isaac Wren, who actually ended up in York and dying in York decades later. Another strange story for another day. But these 2 folks worked together and got a patent for putting images on glass. And putting the images on glass is called ambrotype. And so on October 30th of 1855, the York Gazette runs a very nice article saying, Glenalvin Goodrich is just always innovating. And here we've just had the opportunity to go and see this new process, the ambrotype process. Now, it's an October 30, 1855 article. We don't necessarily know how early before October 30th he had started the process, but we know that it was patented in July of 1854. So sometime in that year, he had started the ambrotype process here in York. He then moved his gallery again. His gallery was called the Extra. Let me see. I'll come back. Uh-oh, that's not going to be helpful. It's going a page at a time, but we'll work with that. Let's see here. I'll be going back, but I want to show you something fancy. Here you can see G.J. Goodrich's Extra Skylight Gallery. So they had to be able to bounce sunlight off of mirrors or through windows to be able to get the chemicals on the silver to react to take them in, to take the image. So an extra skylight was a big thing. But he closed the extra skylight gallery and moved to Goodridge's American Photographic Gallery, and also back in the square, or he changed the name, I should say. And he was there, and 1856 approximately, October 1857, he wins the York Fair's prize for the best milch cow, the best milking cow. He had multiple interests, and the Goodridges, as well as the Grays and others, were also very interested in horses. I'm still trying to get permission from Bill Frazanito, who I met as a child but have not seen since then, to use his wonderful published outdoor daguerreotype of a man standing with a horse with stables behind him. Probably never be able to prove it, but I'm pretty sure that was the backyard of the Goodrich house. And I'm going to tell you why here in a second. But and also at the York Fair, when he had the best milch cow, he did. The judges couldn't decide between him and J.T. Williams, this newcomer that had come in back in 1851 out of Baltimore. You know how we are about people coming in from other places. And but he built a good business here. Oh, somebody from Baltimore back then? So unfortunately, the financial crisis of 1857, we've got these wonderful leaders, particularly in the African-American community, but in the entire community, but they were generous and they helped other families out. And what happens in a financial crisis when you have a bunch of help out there, when you've co-signed for people and things like that? Bankruptcy set in. William Goodrich lost many properties across the city. Glenalvin Goodrich very specifically lost 5. 2 of them on Queen Street, in the corner of Queen and Philly, right around there, and then 2 in the alley behind Philly, on the back of the Goodrich house. So this was just an African-American stronghold community with the Grays and the Goodridges and others just all living in that area. And unfortunately, it took a big hit in 1857. And by 1859, Glenalvin Goodrich had lost 2 houses on those 2 houses, but he also lost a double frame stable. What is in the alley behind the houses there? Unmarked non-residential buildings. So I think with their enthusiasm for horses, and I'm pretty sure that Bill Frazanito picture was taken right out the studio, because back then you didn't necessarily travel around a lot. There were a few photographers that really traveled around a lot with their equipment, but not many. So again, don't know if I'll ever be able to prove such a thing, but it is of interest to me. So after the financial crisis, Glenalvin Goodrich goes back to teaching again some more. 1858, he's teaching in York. 1859, he substitutes in Baltimore. Not sure how long he was living down there, but he was definitely in Baltimore, and the Grays were from Baltimore. Of course, his father was from Baltimore, but didn't really remember anything from Baltimore. His father was sent up here as a 6-year-old child and indentured into the tannery business. But so didn't, and you don't know what kind of connections they had. It is amazing over long distances how people stayed connected, particularly with the Underground Railroad. It's quite amazing. But he's back here by 1861, and not only does he publicly reopen his photography business, but he also opens a new studio over in Columbia. So now he's over in Columbia too. There are no, let me say it this way. I have not found any images that can be definitively placed in Columbia. I'm very interested, you can imagine. to try and find that. I've been over in the Columbia Museum. There aren't many daguerreotypes, or actually would be ambrotypes. But he does at that time also say that he is that he is also doing collodion negatives, which means that he's starting to potentially produce paper images as well. And right after the 4th of July, 1861, in the I believe in the New York Gazette again, it says that he took a 4x8-inch negative of the 4th of July procession from the window at the Hartman building. So now his studio is in the exact building on the southeast corner of the square that was built to diminish his father. So now he's literally on top of that building after they tried to do that to his dad. I like that. But soon everything collapsed. And on August 28th, you know, I said meaningful, and I'll get to a lot more meaning, but you can already see the meaning in this young man's life. What he did, he took a completely new thing, brought it to York, crossed racial barriers, became successful, lost, rebuilt himself. Just such a strong individual. And then on August 28, 1862, he was indicted for raping of a white woman in his gallery. And I will at this time give credit not only to Linda Reese. Is it Reese or Rice?
Reese.
It is Reese. Okay. Linda Reese she wrote the first article, I believe, ever on specifically on Glenalvin Goodrich with the Pennsylvania Historic Museum Commission.
No, this was published in the Daguerrean Annual.
Oh.
The Daguerrean Society.
And that's a copy that I haven't gotten yet. That's what, 1991?
No, something like that.
Yeah, 1991 copy of the Daguerrean Annual. That's an annual book that the Daguerrean Society, the people that are obsessed with these things like me, they have a great publication that comes out every year. The Daguerrean Society, you should look it up if you're interested in old images. But Linda Reese and then John Vincent Jazierski wrote the book called Enterprise and Images. And while there are a couple of misstatements in there, as with almost every history book, it is a very solid history of the Goodrich, what would become the Goodrich photography dynasty. But before I get to the dynasty, let me tell you about the downfall of Glenalvin Goodrich himself. So some interesting things happen. There's a trial, and the young woman, Mary E. Smith, who lived on South Street, she claims that she was basically raped by Glenalvin Goodrich. She has a couple witnesses that support her, but she also has a witness that says that Mary Smith said that she'd give me $6 if I wouldn't show up and testify. And she said she'd get me a new bonnet if I went to Baltimore and just got out of town. And when she walked off with Wallace, Glenalvin's brother, she came back with 3 coins and gave me one of them. Wallace Goodrich, the younger brother, is not at the trial. And in the census of July 1863, it says, gone to Canada. He did not stay. Some of the witnesses say it was Wallace that she was with voluntarily, and that she was concerned that she might be pregnant, and she had to have a reason why her baby might be coming out darker than if she had been with one of the soldiers over in Penn Park, because the soldiers were camped out. And she was known to have been hanging out with the soldiers. Just a real disaster. And looking for scapegoats against the evidence, Glenalvin Goodrich was found guilty and sent to the Eastern Penitentiary on February 24th, 1863. After being at the Eastern Penitentiary, his health declines rapidly. Now, I always have a question here. He got tuberculosis. you know anything about making daguerreotypes, you know that it's a process of bathing chemicals in mercury vapor, and it wasn't uncommon that this kind of thing happened to the early photographers. But there's no doubt that prison would have exacerbated such a situation. And but his dad, Glenalvin's dad, William Goodridge, did not let up. He started an immediate campaign of petitioning and letter writing to the governor. This injustice could not stand. And I couldn't find this, but I think it is in the book. Glenalvin Goodrich was sentenced to 5 years. I believe at that time, a white individual who had raped a white woman was sentenced to 15 years. Got to find and document that. But if that doesn't tell you something, and again, I'm waiting for the corrections from the historians out there, but that is something that is in my head, and I have to find the footnote to prove that again. But it would seem to be common knowledge that he didn't do it, and that they just needed somebody, and Wallace wasn't around. And so all these prominent citizens of York, 107 prominent citizens, religious leaders, business leaders, political leaders, they all petitioned the governor. I think it was 7 of the 9 people involved in the court case petitioned the governor. Finally, one of the governor's close friends, Dr. Bressler, petitioned him and said, look, even the judge, even if the Judge Fisher didn't write a letter yet, he was the one that oversaw everything. But if you push him, I think he'll support this too. And other people were not as kind. There were multiple quotes that said this would have never happened to a white person in York County. This evidence would have never put a white person away. So the petitions ended up being successful. And he didn't have to do 5 years. He was actually let out about 1 year and 9 months into his sentence, December 15th, 1864, and on the condition that he and his family leave the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You can get out of jail, but all of you, I never want to see you again. We want to have a memory of you. We don't want to know about you in York. This entire trial, I can only find 2 articles. One when he was indicted and one when he was found guilty. I mean, the newspapers used to be pretty thorough. They weren't talking about this. So unfortunately then they got out of town and they went to visit his brothers who had not gone to Canada. Maybe they went to Canada, but then they came back to Michigan, to East Saginaw, Michigan. They went out and spent a little bit of time there. They went to visit his sister in Minnesota, and he passed away less than 3 years after being, what do you call that? When you're kicked out of somewhere. What happens when you're kicked out of a religion? You're excommunicated, basically. They were excommunicated and shipped out of York, never to return. But the story doesn't stop there, because his 2 brothers, William and Wallace, William O. and Wallace, had been working with him here in York, and they learned the process. They learned about photography. They started a dynasty in East Saginaw, Michigan, that lasted until 1922. 1847 until 1922, 75 years of a small business, African-American owned photography company. I believe a feat never to have been matched in the history of the United States. Meaningful, tragic. It's the life of Glenalvin Goodrich. So with that, I wanted to, I'm not sure how many of you are interested in the how am I on time? Okay, okay. The depth to which I go into these things, but let me share a little bit with you here. So I started And I'll let you know when we have some names for people so that we can maybe associate it. I do want to thank very posthumously the Latimer and Fisher families for their donations to the Historical Society, because you will see this name come up over and over again. Those names come up over and over again. Anne Helen Fisher married James Latimer, so that both family collections kind of came together and at some point came to the Historical Society, now the York County History Center. So I was able to get these images, most of them, I think 26 are from here at the York County History Center. The York County History Center, and I'm sure there's some more verification from some other folks. I'm hoping that my evidence will convince folks that that these are the images I say are Goodrich's is. I'll show you the reasons why. We are very blessed that Glenalvin Goodrich didn't seem to like change very much in his accessories. Some photographers had different backdrops every couple of months, had different furniture, had different things that they would have people holding. They had vases, they had curtains. Not Glenalvin Goodrich. He liked the same tablecloth, something I call the Moorish tablecloth. It's some kind of French damask, possibly, but I don't have a. I've asked some fabric experts and have not gotten a definitive answer on what this comes. It seems to be a French damask with a phoenix on it. And I'll show you that. But luckily, yeah, he didn't change much. And while and from every image I'll show you has the same tablecloth. So all 47 images have the exact same tablecloth. Probably 20 some have the same chair. And it's a very, very unique chair. I've never seen this chair. Sometimes you got to understand that just like today, if you're a photographer and you wanted to set up a studio, there were suppliers. And they would, so you have, I'll show you, there's probably 8 or 10 photographers that use the same tablecloth as Glenalvin Goodrich. So you can't just go with the tablecloth. You've got to go with the pose. I'm going to give Joe Shane a shout out here. Joe Shane turned me on to what he calls the down and dirty. That means you put your right arm over here. Well, it's inverted, so it would have been a left arm. But when we're looking at it, it looks like your right arm's over here and your fingers are pointed pretty straight down. And that comes out of Philadelphia. A lot of Philadelphia artists trained by possibly M.P. Simons or Marcus Aurelius Root. Some of those individuals over there kind of trained this area's photographers. And so you see this a lot in the Philadelphia area. But what I'm looking at and all the writing you'll see over here, first, the date comes last. So you'll see the date is the first thing because this is a chronological compilation here, but the date is the very last thing that I come up with, unless it's on the case, as is the case in a couple cases. But you start off, what kind of image is it? Is it on silver or is it on glass? This is on silver. This one, luckily, we have a label on it. It says G.J. Goodridge, daguerreotypist. Oh, it doesn't say artist. It says daguerreotypist, York, PA. So that one's pretty plain and simple. These labels are underneath the glass usually, and the glass would be taped, hopefully, with the rest of the image. So that gives you a pretty good idea that that is the real deal. He put his name on it, you know. Then you date the case. You can date the cases. This is called a mat. You'll see different designs of mats. Different designs of mats were used during different dates. You'll see I'm talking about the table. Is he at a table? How many books are on the table? What kind of tablecloth is it? What is the mat? This guy has a top hat on the table, which he brought with him. That's not an accessory. What's the pad? The red silk pad. What size is it? 1/6. 1/6 means a plate of silver came about that big, and they cut it into 6 pieces, or they cut it into 9 pieces, or they had pre-cuts also that were stamped in silver. So here we have what I believe is the earliest image that I have seen anywhere from Glenalvin Goodrich. Close second. Her case is a little bit later. You'll see her mat's the same. Now she's got 2 books, and see the down and dirty pose? See that hand's hanging straight down? That case is a little later, so we dated that one at 1850. And that one, that case was made by Myron Shoe over in Philadelphia. So he's getting his products from Philadelphia essentially, and getting instruction from Philadelphia as well. Then my tied for favorites are the couple here, and they have given us a date for them that really helps us. See the hands aren't quite specifically down. That's really the down and dirty when you're like, it looks almost awkward. See the 2 books.
This was that Robb family, were they related, people related to contemporary Robbs or
Yeah.
even the Fitz?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, they were they Mennonites? I think they were Mennonites. They moved to Iowa, moved to Illinois, and then they moved to Iowa. And actually, it's great. This set came with documentation of their tombstones, with a letter from the family member saying, hey, this case was in a lot better shape when mom and dad had it. Don't know what happened to it in the move, but here it is. You know, this one came with all the bells and whistles for verification. And if you look really closely, how did you tell me to do this? Is it control? If you look really closely, now how do I go? And down. The guy selling it didn't see this little thing in here. That's a Goodridge label. It was taped in, it was glued inside the case, something I haven't seen anywhere else. But that was very helpful.
My contemporary plain people have a resistance to being photographed. Was that an issue back in those days?
I am not sure. I know the Quakers seem to love it. There's a lot of Quaker photos out of Philadelphia.
Repeat the question, Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So the audience
So
can
yes, so it was asked that contemporary plain people have objection to being photographed. Was it the same back then? I can tell you that there are many images of Quakers coming out of the Philadelphia area. I am not sure regarding Amish, Mennonite.
Yeah, I thought maybe it was the Anabaptists and maybe the Brethren and the
There
Brethren.
are a bunch of Anabaptist ones too. I read an article, they're in a library, they're in a college library over near Philadelphia. So I'm not sure. Linda, yes.
There are so many divisions and subdivisions of the Amish and Mennonites. Some were more conservative
Yes.
than others, so it is likely that there were some Mennonites who are less conservative than the Amish probably had their interest.
So Linda Reese responded that there are so many basically subgroups of Amish and Mennonite, just as there are today. That some will drive a car, some will drive a car that doesn't have chrome, some will not touch anything. So that some may have, some groups probably allowed it, some others probably did not. Going down through here, I want to recognize the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art out in Kansas City. They allowed me to use this image right here. Again, hand pretty straight down, 2 books. I didn't mention the chairs. There's little corners of chairs that you can see here, and I've also documented those. I've only documented him using 4 different chairs in his entire 15, well, 5 depending on what you think about this cat that I'm going to show you. But basically 4 chairs 3 chairs consistently, 1 chair once with a human and 1 chair once with a cat. And again, now we're moving out, we're in this mid-range between being at the Goodridge house and into his new studio. This is Mariah Hildebrand, who lived on North Beaver Street below the Episcopal Church. So her little card tells us exactly where she lived. However, my research could not find her on North Beaver Street across from the Episcopal Church. Or below the Episcopal Church. Now she's interesting, and she's going to start showing us some of our problems. You see that? Not original. Sometimes what you see was not original. So this is an image from 1850 to 1853, yet the mat comes from a much later date, and the preserver, this is called a preserver, thing around the edges. They realized pretty early on that if they didn't put something around the edges, the tape would come apart and the silver image would start to tarnish. So they came up with, taping it and then putting a preserver around the edge. So mat, preserver, case, pad over there in the red. Here's Elias Ebert. The Eberts controlled a large area of land in the northeast of New York City. Ebert's Lane is over there, right past, that's past Sherman Street, a couple streets. Tremont, thank you. Thank you. So there's Elias Ebert. And again, you just see the same thing over and over again in a lot of these images. 2 books, kept using the same 2 books for years. He used the same 2 books. I've measured those books and he's using the same books. I checked the little bent corners and everything. Now we get our first image. It's just so cute. And this one, thanks to Carol Kane Woodbury and William H. Kane III. This is one of 2 of their ancestors, Amanda Hay and Clara Maria Hay. And this is the first time you can barely see it. You see the bobbing chair in the back corner. I had to go, they let me go to their house just to try and get a decent, it was so hard to get a picture of that image. You also notice, if you haven't yet, we're getting into something, look at the cases. See the case, front case, recto, verso, and mat. Recto is the front of the case, verso is the back, and then the pad. See it? They're all matching up. And so I dated these independently, but now you're seeing also that the cases show consistency. Here's another gentleman. Again, this is from Ross Kelball, a collector down in Maryland.
Michael, another 15 minutes, and that includes questions.
Okay, I will move pretty rapidly here. Same thing. This is one out of my collection, another one out of my collection. This one was tough because there's no table or anything, but if you look really close, you can see a tiny bit of the bobbing chair right behind him. And he's in a good Goodrich case, solid Goodrich case, but you can take any image and put it in any case. So this one, because he wasn't anything unusual, there's not much reason for him to be put into a Goodrich case. If he had something really fancy, put it into a Goodrich case, it would make it much more valuable. But putting a normal looking guy into a Goodrich case. So this is the first guy I ever bought here. Here's one from the Clements Library Collection in the University of Michigan. Now you see the case has just changed and it's moved up a little bit, 1851 to 1853. You get the same case, and now you're, oh, that's another one from my collection there. And by the way, they're over here. You can look at them afterwards, the ones that are in my collection. Here. In case you didn't know, this was a thing. They didn't have, when somebody died, you wanted to remember them. Post-mortems. There are a lot of pictures of early pictures of dead people and dead babies. It's really sad, but they wanted a memento of their loved ones. And it's not like now where you got a million pictures on your phone. They would come with their little baby to the studio. Sometimes a photographer would make a super special trip and go out to the people's house. This one I'm still trying to figure out. It's here in the collection, but the name doesn't match the date here. The name of the person that they say it is, and this happens with history all the time. 2 generations later, they're like, oh yeah, that's Grandma so-and-so. Yeah, Grandma so-and-so didn't die at the time that this thing was taken. So we got to work on it. It came from the Hans family in Manchester, Mount Wolf area. This is an interesting one that I'm really working on. We need facial recognition work here. So I've collected some pictures of the Fisher children. So these are potentially the children of the judge that oversaw the trial that sent Glenalvin Goodridge to his eventual death. This is here in the York County History Collection, but needs more work for authentication. It says that the comment literally says possibly Fisher children. So I'm going to be looking for some facial experts because we have pictures of some of these children when they're older. But now we need some people that know how to do that, you know, that have an eye for that. This is one of my favorites because I got this from somebody. Well, this was only listed as Susan Edgar in, I can't remember the cemetery, but it's down near Winterstown. And it didn't even say York County on it. I was just like, okay, that's in York. Is it Bermudian something? No, that's because that's out west. I can't remember the name of the cemetery right now. But I was able to find out who she was, and then through census data and other things, actually find out who the two children were in here. So this is one of those, again, through support of Frank and Rebecca Countess, I was able to purchase this, do all the research to identify the individuals that are in this image. And she lived in York when this was taken, and then later lived out. Her husband died in 1860 and left them in bad shape. Now we get into some of the Latimers. This one was very difficult to put together, and I'm sure there could be some questions on this. But what I'll show you is that he's in a half case, so the lid's missing. But that half case matches the back of her case. And then there's something I was showing Linda earlier, somewhere around 1853, Glenalvin Goodrich. So you got to imagine, you get these silver plates, you have to buff them perfectly to get the image on it. Big process. And Glenalvin got some kind of machine that required little nicks in the plates. So if you can find these nicks, it's yet another thing that can help confirm it. So this guy has the right nicks. And he's also in the family where they just keep going to Goodrich. And then the case matches also. So that's what I'm basing this one on. It's probably one of my weaker cases. Where am I at?
I'm start asking questions.
Okay, well, I've got to get through a couple more here. So this is the most important image I believe that we have, and that is the wife of Judge Fisher, the second wife of Judge Fisher. This is who he would have been married to when he was overseeing the hearing, and then two of his children. And this was through the assistance of Frank and Rebecca Countess and Casey Waters and Fine Daggs. Casey Waters and Aaron Waters, their dad was a world expert on these, and they become great friends of mine and really helped me in a lot of this stuff. So this isn't just Helfrich in his bedroom figuring this stuff out. I'm actually working with some of the world-known experts on these things, and I'm very honored. Then he went into the Susquehanna backdrop. I love this. He used this for a couple of years. Linda Shriver Miller. Here's one. Thank you, Linda Reese. And we are going to get a better picture. Her image is over there on the table, and it is spectacular. Photograph, not spectacular, but we're going to get a better one. This guy's great. He's got kind of long locks, and I don't know. He's some kind of funny dude. Everybody know about the bots, and out in, where are they? They're just north of Wolf's Church, right? In that Cadorus Valley kind of thing. So this is Sarah and Rosa. And this is another one. The case isn't right. Her husband got this case and got this photograph at another photographer's and then put the old photo in with it. So you couldn't use that to judge. Here's some more of the Latimers. Another wonderful, here they're starting to use the extra sky, or they've been using the extra skylight. Now he just moved to amber types. So now he is 1855. He's just switched everything over to amber types, and you start seeing all these Latimers. The case mats get very colorful here. Quarter plates, a little bit larger ones. There's only 2 examples known. They've got to be out there. Both have this. They have the same cases. I call it the I mean, I had to make this one up, the golden keyhole, because it doesn't exist in any of the catalog. It's probably made locally, somewhere within the 30-mile radius here. Beautiful one from Christopher Buckingham, a York City resident. Just love this purple pad. Really incredible image. This is a good one. This one, you'll see us what I call a smoky cloud backdrop. You can see a little bit of it on this one too. But these are the Latimers. They're just always, they always come in for Christmas pictures. They're December 24, December 55, December of 56, 54, 55, and 56. They're coming in for Christmas pictures. This poor young man, also a Latimer, he died in 57, so we know that this wasn't any later than 57. Mystery cat from Ross J. Kelwall. In an earlier Goodridge, with an earlier Goodridge pad, in a Boston, a case that's known as the Boston case. This one's an interesting mystery. I'm going to have fun working on some more. Bartow Latimer. Then one of what I think is one of the newest discoveries. I don't think anybody, maybe Allison had documented the 9th plate. I've been able to find quite a few of these now. After he went bankrupt, or right around when he went bankrupt, the whole thing was changing. There were lots of photographers now, and he had to find a niche. So he started making these little ones, sell more, put that product out there. So I guess, let me get to the last, and I've got questions. There's the bobbin chair. That chair you will not find, at least I've looked at tens of thousands of these things, and I've never seen that chair anywhere else. Unique. I will eat my hat if somebody finds somebody else using that chair. Now I move to a large book, and there's the end of that collection. Now here's what you got to be careful of. Goodridge image looks great. Goodridge case. The mat is from Philadelphia from 1847. The case is from York from 1855 or 1856. Is that a Goodridge image or not? We don't know, but the pieces don't match. The Goodridge tablecloth. This one's from New Bedford, Massachusetts. This is a Whitehurst bride from Washington, D.C. She's bride from Washington, D.C., but doesn't have a label. But see, that's the Moorish tablecloth. And can you see the little phoenix bird in the center right under her fan? Here's a couple that are in the Smithsonian. I haven't published them in the book, but I wanted to add them in here, particularly because this is Glenalvin Goodridge's wife, Rhoda. And right below it is my mystery one. This is one that I own, no tablecloth, no nothing. It was made before the time that he used put the nicks in the plate. This one is a mystery. This would have been about 1851. But it looks like a possible wedding picture. It's got these beautiful painted flowers in it. They're not seen anywhere else. And here's my last question. This one's for you, Jeff Kirkland. We know that that Rhoda is mulatto. So she's partially white, partially African-American. And I've got this young lady from 1851. And we were talking about features earlier. Does she or does she not have similar features to Rhoda? You see it? You see it in the eyebrows? You see it in the nose? It's either family or just a strong racial feature connection. So I believe that image over there is of a person of color. And but I have yet to. It's still a mystery out there. So there are still lots of mysteries. There are still hundreds, if not thousands, of Goodridges out there. I hope that you'll make the effort to look through your old stuff. And did I use up all my question time?
No,
No, ask the question.
Okay. I hope folks enjoyed it. Can I get any questions? Yes, Linda.
How do you know that that's Rhoda?
Because it said Rhoda, September.
Good question.
I'm sorry. How do you know that's Rhoda? So I found it in an auction catalog from 2016. It was later bought by Larry West and recently donated to the Smithsonian. But in the back of the case, sometimes people will write things, and it said Rhoda, September 1859. Very few of these images have anything written in the back. I haven't done the handwriting analysis, but I plan to. Remember, I asked you for your handwriting sample because she has handwriting in the back of her case. So you would have to do a little handwriting analysis and prove that that is indeed his handwriting. Yes.
You mentioned that when the tape breaks down, the images become tarnished
Yes.
over time.
When the tape, I mentioned that when the tape breaks down, the images will become tarnished over time.
Is there a rehabilitative process, and is there someone here in the York area who can take daguerreotypes?
Absolutely. The two people that I mentioned earlier are masters at it, or experts at it. That's Erin Waters and Casey Waters. Erin is right over in Lancaster. She's done some of my images. Casey Waters is up in New Hampshire, but there are others that can also do that. They'll put new glass on it because the glass can break down over time, and put chemicals onto the plate that'll then cause other issues, to get the moisture out of it. So yes, absolutely.
So you can take images that are almost obscure.
Well, that's a whole different science, and yes, you can. That is a little bit of a disputed thing. Some people, my opinion is, if they're obscure, what use are they? You know, and there are ways to do it, electrolysis or basically kind of thing to take the tarnish off and to, but it definitely is there's a little controversy in that of whether or not you should do that to images. And you have to be very careful, particularly if they're images that have been colored. I haven't talked about tinting and painting. When you tint or paint an image and you do some of those processes, you can lose those colors. Yes.
You piqued my interest, and after reading Jaworski's book and different things, I've never come across that reference to the Moorish tablecloth. And I was wondering if they had any connection to the Moorish people or Moorish faith.
No, it reminded me of things in the Alhambra when looking at it. Let me see if I can, did I do this? Oops. Yeah, you see that?
Yeah.
It just looks to me like an Islamic design. And so, when you're coming across new things that don't really have definitions or names, you're like, what's a good name? This looks like a golden keyhole. Okay, it's now the golden keyhole case. This is a Moorish tablecloth. If somebody comes up and lets me know, I will definitely alter that. I did forget, I had one more slide, and that was a very important slide. This is said to be Glenalvin Goodrich's mother, and it very well might be. But I will tell you that image was taken around 1851, maybe 1849. We have seen that, well, no, actually it had to be likely after 1850. That is a tablecloth that I have seen used in San Francisco. I've seen it used in New England. I've seen it used in Charleston, South Carolina. I've never seen it used by Glenalvin Goodrich. So if this is Evelina Goodrich, if this is the mother of Glenalvin Goodrich, he took his mother's image and put it in one of his cases. But that image, again, I will, unless somebody can show me somehow, I mean, look, the pose isn't the same, the table, I'm determined to find a matching one to this with this tablecloth and with that exact size table and that pose. But it does not seem to be. And I haven't been able to get, it's with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources for some reason. And I haven't gotten any responses from them when I asked about this. So any other questions?
If first Friday we go to the Goodrich Center, will we see any of Glenalvin's work?
You will see some blown up paper copies. First Friday, I'm not sure if they are open right now. They're open. Are they?
They're opening their festival of trees.
They're opening their festival of trees. Excellent, excellent. Because I know there was just some discussion about when their operating hours were. So no, as of right now, there are not any. we're building the collection, but we also have to build the security and the environmental conditions to make sure that these things will be safe. Again, I'm just gonna, the approximate value of what we put together so far, about $4,000 to $5,000. Possibly more than that. So you can't just, and that's with 3 images. So you can't just put them out there.
How many Glenalvin Goodrich pieces have been confirmed, and how many are, let's say, in doubt nationally or internationally?
I have been able to, again, I've shown you my methodology. It is really up to the York County History Center to determine or get an additional person in to verify what I have done. Up until this time, I'm not sure that they had considered them. I know I've seen possible on some of the images and things like that. I did a very, very thorough study of them and have shown my methodology. So I am aware of 65 images. At this current time, 65 or 66. Again, I know there are many, many more out there. Any other questions? I know I'm supposed to wrap up. Yes, Nicole?
There was one online asking if there's any indication that he worked in prints, Alvin prints.
I'm not sure about Buckingham prints, but there is this quote from the July 9th, 1861 York Gazette that says Goodridge takes a 4-inch by 8-inch negative of the 4th of July procession from the window at the Hartman building. So at the southeast corner of the square, he's taken an image out of the building, and it says the photograph is considerably larger than the negative. Well, the only way you can have a photograph considerably larger than the negative is if it's on paper. Because the tintype is on the tintype. And I think I'm accurate in that statement. Ambrotypes and daguerreotypes are one of a kind. You can take a picture of a daguerreotype to make a copy, but that thing is a unique piece of art, which is another reason why I love it so much, that these are each pieces of art. Great.
Thank you, Michael.
Oh, thank you all. Thank you all for your time. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out tonight. We thank our digital audience out there as well. We appreciate a lot of behind the scenes work that goes on. Nicole Smith does a stalwart job, an unsung job. We just want to sing her praises here tonight for all that she does. Jamie Kinsley helps out with this project. She's under the weather tonight. Appreciate Tommy working here tonight as well. Thank you all very much.
Sorry, I didn't mention, there are images from Glenalvin Goodrich, also his competitor, Jason